Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge and Excelsior. Today we're going to be talking about Marvel Behind the Mask. This is an hour and 4 minute documentary. It came out this year, 2021, and I have to admit something. I started this twice already, and I got a little bit too into it that long before I ever got to the point of picking tomorrow's episode. I honestly, it was in a minute or two, and I was just like, yeah, this isn't working out. Um, I'm a little bit close to this whole Marvel thing because I grew up with Marvel. I've been reading it since the 70s. I've been reading it Marvel comics for a long time, and something like this, I think I kind of knew this existed, but I just forgot about it completely, and I forgot what it was about. But I kind of should have figured that out. This was made since Stan Lee's death, but he's certainly has a presence in it because a lot of what we know as Marvel today was originally founded by him and Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko and John Buscema. Hopefully, I'm saying his name right. John Romita Sr. and Roy Thomas. So many other names that many of you, if you're not Marvel Comics fans, you probably have no idea who I'm talking about. But there are a number of creators in this thing. If you're a Marvel fan, it's chock full of people you know. From Don McGregor, who created the Black Panther. Yeah. And Brian Michael Bendis, John Quesada, Joe Quesada, John Quesada, Joe Quesada, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Reggie Hudlin, uh, so many others. Just it's a it's a large amount of creators talking about uh, what made Marvel unique when it first started. I mean, back with Jack Kirby and Joe Simon with Captain America, uh, and then moving into the actual age of Marvel in 1961 with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and so many others that have been, starting with the Fantastic Four, and of course that area between there that was horror, western, romance, everything else. They don't go into a whole lot of details when it comes to um, the history of Marvel for Marvel's sake. This is more about the history of Marvel creatively as it reflected the culture and how the culture was reflected through it, uh, through its heroes as well, not just its stories. This is about inclusion. This is about representation. This is about people. This is not just. I mean, Marvel's always been has always tagged itself as the world outside your window. Just happens to have guys swinging on webs and planet eaters and superheroes galore and around every corner, especially if you're in New York City. But this, I mean, that's one of the things I loved when I first went to New York City when I was like 13. I had a whole map. I mapped out uh, where all the different locations were of all the heroes. Where was the Daily Bugle? Where was Avengers Mansion? Where was the Baxter Building where the Fantastic Four lived? In relation to the real world stuff, I just wanted to walk around New York City, and even though I knew that I wouldn't look up and see Spider-Man, and that I wouldn't, see the Fantastic Four's building or the Avengers Mansion, I still wanted to be there. That's kind of how obsessive I was about it, and I am not alone in that. Marvel Comics reflected so much of who I was and who I wanted to be, and the characters I loved growing up. Um, but it's for a really long time, since it's often like so many other industries, including in many bird types of publishing, it was established by young white guys that pretty much had the reins of every single comic book. I mean, the guy who created well, it's just the guys who created Captain America were Jewish guys. The first comic they created, Captain America, had him punching Hitler out. That's the leader of a foreign country. You just don't normally see that in comic books. I mean, Superman and Batman have been around for a while, but they lived in their own world. In this world, Nazis were a bad thing, and hopefully they still are. Right, people? It's it's the idea that that this shows what it was like for immigrants, assimilated immigrant kids who create superheroes, were at the forefront of what we see as uh, the transformative medium of comics today. Um, we see they touch on a number of different things, whether it's race or gender or sexuality. There's always been metaphors thrown around. The X-Men have always been a great metaphor for the struggle of LGBTQ before that was even an acronym, or yeah, whatever. But there's also, I mean, there was always stories about women, but they were always the girlfriend. You know, they weren't necessarily the focus, or they were powered differently, so they'd always look hot while doing their thing. It was always under the under the male gaze type of art and storytelling. There's a lot to overcome, and while Marvel pushed the envelope and was far ahead when it came to things like the civil rights movement and inclusiveness and everything else, by creating characters like the Black Panther or Luke Cage, even though he was very much a blaxploitation type character at the time, and while they were very progressive in a number of ways, they were still coloring their Asian characters yellow. And when certain comics went to the printer, like Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, they had a wide variety of soldiers in there, and when it went to the people who colored the books, they thought, well, that's strange. That person seems a little bit darker. Well, he must be white. Everybody in comics is white, and they got in trouble for that, and they even in subsequent printings, the one black character on that crew, one of the Howling Commandos, he looked gray, like he's a statue, or he was the original Hulk or something. It was they had trouble with color. Even Marvel Comics, as progressive as they were, even into the 70s. Yeah, there's so much history reflected. I've read my share of books about Marvel Comics and their history. I've gone to tons of panels at Comic Cons all around the country with creators that talk about the history of the characters who created the stories they wrote, and there's been nothing like this, at least the panels I've been to or the books I've read, that so succinctly look at it from the fans' point of view and the creator's point of view as to what Marvel did right and wrong over the years. But ultimately, they did. It's a pro Marvel thing. It's made by Marvel, so it's in the end. It's even when they screw up and they do something really crappy, they hopefully learn from it. And from the looks of it, they have. It makes certain types of people angry, that women and black people and Asians and anybody else, gays, anybody that's not them, has a voice or can see their face in a comic book. It makes the people who don't like those people rather grumpy. But who cares? You guys shouldn't be represented. Let's just say that. I'm actually, you know what? You are represented. You're called villains. Very often Nazis. But yeah, it's a number of familiar faces throughout this. If you're into comics, if you're not, and you've always wondered where all these stories came from, where the evolution of things like characters like the Black Panther or Ms. Marvel, or who became Captain Marvel, and then the other Ms. Marvel, who we're going to be seeing very soon on Disney Plus, who's a Muslim teenage girl from Jersey City named Kamala Khan. If you want to understand where those stories came from and why Marvel is what it is, they could have easily done this for a good 5 hours and gone deep into it, but an hour fits perfectly and gives you a really good idea of everything that has gone into making Marvel Comics over the years that reflect the culture. Eventually, it's sadly not always been a very inclusive industry behind the scenes and in the books, but that could be said. That's to be said about every comic book creative company over the years. So, it's a very tiring day. So, anyway, I'm scatterbrained right now. If you haven't figured that out, but yeah, I highly recommend this if you're a Marvel fan and you haven't seen this yet. And if you don't understand comics, this will give you a nice little peek into what goes into creating it and what has gone into creating some iconic moments in history when it comes to characters of color and representation of all types. So I will. Did I get that? Okay, I thought I got a warning there. Sorry. We're going to finish this up real quick before my battery runs out. Let's pick tomorrow's episode.
441.
All right, 441. I was very scared that I was going to have to do this all over again. 441. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh, this might be the old one. There's a number of versions of this movie, or yeah, I think this is the older one, the one without Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Yes, we're gonna be watching Return from Witch Mountain. Return from Witch Mountain. I think this is the older one, different name. So, Return from Witch Mountain on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.